What's good, y'all? I'm your host, Adam, and this is the Tier List of Video Game Podcast. It's a seasonal video game podcast where a guest brings a game for the titular tier list. That's what the podcast is named after. We talk about it, we rank it, but you, the audience, gets a final say in where it's placed in the list by the end of the season. This is Season 1, Episode 3, and today I have a fantastic guest. The best. Didn't invite me out to eat Mexican tonight, but that's perfectly fine. It's Matt Storm.
Rude.
What's up, Matt?
What's up? Maybe if you ever visited New York, I would actually invite you out to some really great stuff. But you hang out, wherever the hell you're from, and I never see you.
In the middle of nowhere is where I'm from. But tell everyone what you do, and then the game that you decided to bring for the tier list this week.
Sure, I'll try and keep the plugs brief, as we could be here all night. But I do host two podcasts, Funny Games and Reignite. Funny Games is a play-along podcast, started covering Mass Effect. Then we moved on from Mass Effect to covering Dragon Age. We're currently covering Dragon Age 2. I host that with the incredible Frankie Bradley Lestrange. It's a good time. Mostly we talk about the characters we want to romance, because that's really what people care about. And then the other podcast I do is Fun and Games with the incredible Jeff Moonen. It is a broad topic-based discussion style podcast. We have guests of all kinds. We interview game developers, composers. We talk about different genres of games, retrospectives, and then we have a sub-series within that feed called Side Quests. Adam has done 2 episodes for that. It is a moment for a person to monologue about their favorite game and why they love it. Adam has covered Baldur's Gate 3 was the first one, but I'm struggling to remember what the second one was.
Inscription was the second one.
Inscription, which was also a banger. And so this is me giving folks an opportunity to just gush about their favorite games free of judgment, because as we like to say on Funny Games, every game is somebody's favorite. It doesn't matter good, bad, indifferent, old, new. Somebody loves every video game. Though that's basically what I do. I'm also a DJ sometimes in my downtime, and I like to goof off on Twitch when I have the time. And the game I brought is one of my all-time favorites, and what I think is the best Metroidvania ever made. I know, bold words. Metroid Fusion for the Game Boy Advance.
Yes, we will talk about Metroid Fusion. Again, this series is great. I'm just playing games I've never played before. But first, you can go to patreon.com/thetierlist. There is a free tier there where you can vote and support if you'd like to for just a couple of dollars a month. Make sure to sub and review on podcast services. Follow me on socials at Adam Gumby or the podcast at Tierlist Gaming. Sub on YouTube, youtube.com/Adam Gumby. All of these links, as well as the guest info, are in the description, and all of those places will have links for you to vote and place Metroid Fusion where it deserves to be in the tier list according to you, the audience. So that's why all that stuff is important. Go check all that out. All right, so we're going to start here first. You need to tell me your history with Metroid Fusion, why you wanted to bring it, why does it matter, is the blue suit good or not? No, that's not actually what we're talking about, but just give me your opening statement and where you think it deserves to be on the tier list.
Sure. So while I pander and a delay for time while I still debate where I want to put it on the list, my history with Metroid Fusion, it's the game that got me into the genre. Now, to be fair, that could also be attributed to Super Metroid, the first Metroid game I actually ever played. But I don't think I ever beat Super Metroid in my youth, I'm pretty sure. Metroid Fusion is the first Metroid game I remember being excited about the release of. I was a big Game Boy Advance fan then, and I still am now. And one of the first Metroid games I really remember finishing from beginning to end, 100%ing, all of that nonsense, and I loved it. I was a fan of the series ever since the NES. I had played the NES version and the Game Boy game of Samus Returns, but I didn't finish either of them, of course, because they are incredibly difficult and confusing and convoluted, though they were the launching points for the franchise. It wouldn't be until Super Metroid that I really fell in love with the franchise. But Fusion is the one that I think locked in not only loving this genre, but loving Metroid as a franchise. And so when asked about what game I wanted to talk about, those who know me online might have thought Yakuza 0 or the Mass Effect trilogy. First of all, I couldn't pick one. The Mass Effect trilogy is one game as far as I'm concerned. They are greater together, so that's why I didn't pick that one, because then I'd be fighting about tiering all three, and we'd be here all night. But also, I don't often get to talk about this game as much as I love it. it's not my go-to first choice to discuss. I've picked a lot of other games that I know you even love, like Control and the like, that I tend to go to back for first. But having replayed this a bunch of times recently and this year, as of when we're recording, maybe not when this releases, I started replaying the 2D Metroid timeline. I say it that way because I was not playing Metroid 1 or 2 on their original versions. Instead, I played Zero Mission on the Game Boy Advanced, and then Samus Returns on the 3DS. Both fantastic games. Zero Mission is the way to play the original Metroid story because the NES game is not, just doesn't hold up to modern standards. And I like Samus Returns on the 3DS a lot. And so I was like, all right, well, then I'll play Super Metroid, which I did as well. That still holds up as is with some minor complaints. And then I was like, well, let's play Fusion again for I don't even know how many times, double digits at this point. And because it was on my mind, though I didn't finish a full replay for this podcast, I was very much excited to talk about this game because it had been on my mind quite a bit. And I think the complaints about what's wrong with this game are coming from a nitpicky standard as a Metroid fan. Like, there's too much dialogue, there's too much story, it's segmented instead of one giant map. All these things that I think are an improvement to the formula, especially as an adult with a job and limited time. I've only come to love it more. But I thought it would be a fun game to talk about. I had actually thought you had played it, so I thought it'd also be a lock for like something that you would know. We'll get to that. But yeah, and this game holds a special place in my heart. It's one of my top 10 games of all time. And I think it's the pinnacle of showing off what the Game Boy Advance could do, just in the same way that like Super Metroid was the pinnacle of showing off what the Super Nintendo could do. I think that game graphically is still one of the most beautiful and cool looking 16-bit games ever made. And I think Super Metroid, especially now how you can play it on emulators or on the Switch with like the correct lighting and not a dark, barely backlit screen, I think people can really see this game for what it is and better interpret its worth even now more so than before.
All right. So we've talked about it, gone back and forth. Where do you think you can change? This isn't, you don't have to cement it in, to the history books. But where do you think you want to put Metroid Fusion on the tier list? You have in front of you the description of what each tier is. I'll repeat it for the audience once you pick one. But where do you think you'd like to start putting it?
I really think, and this is not even just my personal bias of it being one of my favorite games, I really think this is an S tier game. And I have a lot of reasons for why. Per your description, a masterclass in gaming, I think this showed us what Metroidvanias could do when first of all, this defined Metroid as a horror series. There was some of it in Super Metroid, but fighting the SAX and like it stalking you the entire game, like Resident Evil also has that, and this is basically the same thing in a different way. It's not as persistent, but it is constantly a threat.
There's another game that does this that I actually think is a more direct comparison that's like 20 years later. We'll talk about that in a second.
All right. But I do think it's easily one of the best games ever made, because I don't think the people's complaints about the specifics of this game are valid in saying it's a bad game. I think it's more to your taste of what you want from a game and not the quality of this game. And I can explain more of that as we get into it.
Okay, so Matt's going to place an S tier. S tier, a masterclass in gaming. This tier represents an all-time great, something easily recommended to all gamers, pinnacle of the genre, top 25 of all time, or near perfect. Could describe games placed in this tier. All right, so some of my thoughts. So I didn't know the history of this game specifically. I've played a couple of the Metroid games. I've never been a huge Metroidvania fan, big love that. Metroid itself.
Yeah.
I didn't care about gaming until it was like the year 2000, 2001. So like as 11-year-old kid, I'm not going back to the NES and the Super Nintendo. I had an NES and I had the original Metroid. I played it for like, I don't know, 5 seconds and then my soft brain couldn't figure it out. But so this is my first time ever playing this game completely to the end. And not knowing the history of where diehard fans feel about it, there's things that this game does that I like a lot, that I think actually were more entertaining than I think maybe the more classic version. We already talked about like oh, having it's more linear and smaller, and it's like you don't get to just explore aimlessly. You know what sounds good to me? It's not having to
Yeah.
explore aimlessly in a game I don't have no nostalgia for. So again, my first time. There are things about it I like a lot. There are also things about it that it's like this is a Game Boy Advance game, and it is 2025, and I won't forgive you, but I won't hold against you either. I won't talk about where I put it on the tier list until later. But first time playing it, things I liked a lot, some things that I could see people having issues with, but we'll see when we get there. I took this stuff from Wikipedia, the basic rundown, in case you have no idea what Metroid Fusion is, which would be insane. Metroid Fusion is a 2002 action adventure game developed and published by Nintendo for the Game Boy Advance. It is the fourth main installment in the Metroid franchise. Yeah, Metroid 4 comes up when you start the game. That was weird.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was going to
Yep.
happen. Players control the bounty hunter Samus Aran, who investigates a space station infected with shape-shifting parasites known as X. Along with the GameCube game Metroid Prime, Fusion marked the return to the Metroid series after an 8-year hiatus following Super Metroid. Fusion is more linear than the other Metroid games due to its focus on storyline. For example, Fusion introduces Navigation Room, which tell the player where to go. I think we should also, when talking about this game, I'm going to do it, you don't have to do it. The fact that this game also came out at the same time as Metroid Prime might skew my idea where it deserves to be on the tier list, because you know how people feel about Metroid Prime compared to other things, but we'll get there when we get there.
I'm gonna get myself in a lot of trouble. Just you wait.
Listen, we'll see. We'll see what happens. See what the comments look like. But we're gonna go ahead and move on to the main part. This is where we talk about. This is full spoilers abound. We talk about anything. This is your making your case at this point. This is the main crux of it. The one thing I do want to get to that's fun to notice, right? Metroid as a series is very heavily influenced by Ridley Scott's Alien. Obviously, because the bad guy is literally called Ridley, and it's a female protagonist. Obviously, it's very. They don't even hide it what it is. Nope. I love in this game how it's like there's a monster that stalks you. By the way, I love that SAX. That's Samus Aran X, right? Is that what it's supposed to be?
Yeah,
they never say that, but I'm assuming it's It's either
it's the Samus Aran X Parasite. Yeah.
Or I'm like, or it's a cool sax. It's a cool saxophone, whatever that means. But I love how this game, again, full spoilers here, is that you have this parasite that is just Samus Aran from the old game, who will randomly hunt you down, and you can't fight it, and you have to run away from it. And closer to the end of the game, you find out that it like splits itself to reproduce, and there are multiple Samus Arans running around at any time. And like and again, obviously Aliens has this kind of a thing where like, oh, one of these things is dangerous. Oh, actually, there's a whole bunch of them. If anyone's ever played Alien Isolation, they tell you about a game where you're by yourself, you can't fight the enemy, you think there's one enemy for a long time, and then all of a sudden, oh, by the way, there's like 30 of these bad guys all over the place. I think it's just funny how like this thing based on Alien had this kind of gameplay loop and this revelation near the end of the game, which Alien Isolation does the exact same thing. I just thought in my head that was really funny. But anyways, we can actually talk about the real video game now. It's just a stupid thing Adam noticed. That's all that was. But where do you want to start? What do you want to talk about?
Well, so I think the big thing to talk about here is like Metroid 4 came out at the same time as Metroid Prime. They were trying two different things, right? Prime takes place, I believe, between 1 and 2. It's an alternate path of the story before the events kick off of eradicating the Metroids, and then of course rescuing the last Metroid. The last Metroid is in captivity. That's the big line from 3. Or 2 rather. But I think the big thing about this game that's really interesting is it's trying more narrative, it's trying more story, and it's giving the player direction to go. Things that did not exist in the previous games. You had an idea of where to go with the map in the third game. The third game revolutionized like the grid maps that we see in every Metroidvania now. That basically started in Metroid 3. But the thing I think that's really interesting about Fusion and why I think it's a top tier game is because it is the most approachable of the Metroid games. Like you said, you'd never played this before. You jump in and immediately it's telling you where to go. Now, look, I love exploration games and I love Metroidvanias where you have to figure it out for yourself. But I don't think having a quest marker takes that away, especially if you're still exploring the map, because you have to figure out how to get to that place. And as Fusion does many times in this game, especially in the later areas, it looks like it's a straight line to that place, and then there's a dead end. There's a wall. You can't that way. All right, well, maybe there's a hidden panel or a floor I can blow up or a wall I can blow up. Like, they still throw curveballs based on discovery, even though they point you in a direction. And like, for me, I think that this game really paces itself pretty masterfully. I mean, it's about 8 hours long, give or take, closer to 6, how well you know it, closer to 10 if you don't know it well. But like, there's no fat on the bones here. Like, it is all meat. It is all the game operating, I think, at its best as far as exploration and narrative goes. Um, in comparison to other games that came before, not look, I like a lot of all the entire Metroid series. I will say, I didn't play Prime until the remaster last year. So, like, as far as quality, I think this is the better game, even having played the remaster.
Oof. I wonder if that makes people on the internet mad. I don't know.
I don't know either, but I think this is the superior of those two games. Look, Prime is a masterpiece. Like, I loved it. I thought it was great when I played the remaster. I was very like, oh, I don't like first-person shooters. Why would I play a first-person Metroid? That's dumb. I ate my words last year because it is excellent, but I still think this is a superior game, but I also have a preference for 2D Metroid games. Like, that's just my preference. And so I think, like, some of this could be biased, I guess, but I don't know. Even looking at the facts of the exact things that this game provides, I don't know that I agree with the criticisms. I'm curious what yours are, because maybe I'm sure you have good reason for them. I feel like the best part of it about video game discussion is like that your critique could be because of your preference, not necessarily because there's anything wrong with the game, which is just as valid.
My main issue, again, some the things that I do love that it tells me where to go. Like, because recently, me and you both played it. There was a Metroidvania you had to review, right? Or we got
Yeah.
to review early.
Yeah.
And playing a Metroidvania game and not having any access to information is one of the most infuriating things of all time. Like, I spent probably double the time that game actually takes to play because I was the one who had to figure out how to do everything. I like that this game is like, literally, it's like you can't go back through that door. You got to you got to go this way because this is where the puzzle is. And then you get the area to explore. So I like all that. I like the nav computer talking to you. The big reveal who it is, I don't know who that person is, so that means nothing to me, but cool, interesting. So I do like that. The only issues is that it's still the game. It's not the game's fault. I guess it's my fault for being Metroid 4. It expects you to know how Metroid works.
Yeah, it does.
And if you don't, again, if you're like me and you haven't actually played a lot of these games, it's like I know the language just through like popular culture and being into video games and stuff. But like how many like hidden, you got to drop bombs in these random corners to find where to get more energy. I'm like, why? How would I ever know that? How would I know where to go and find any of that stuff? That's not a thing. If you know Metroid, you know to do that. If you're playing this game for the first time, you have no idea about that. So there are little things with like progression and puzzle solving and stuff. Again, the game is so lean. It's not a huge negative. I'm not like, oh my gosh, just wasted my time, because it's not. Which, again, thank you for being short. But there is a thing where like, you know how to play Metroid, so you know how all this works. And I'm like, I actually don't know how to play Metroid that well. I know it a little bit. So there are things that just like took a little long. I didn't necessarily understand how everything worked. That bogged it down a little bit. But again, if it was a 15-hour game, I'd be much more upset. When it's a 6-hour game, it's not as bad. But there is definitely you know how to do this, right? And that's it. That's all of it. And I'm like, maybe not. So that's my main issue, is that I'm just kind of aimlessly doing stuff sometimes because I don't know the language.
Okay. And that's totally valid. However, I would argue that every Metroidvania tells you that. Like, maybe not the specific use of bombs, but is it not true that in Hollow Knight and Silksong, you have to break hidden walls? You have to look for secrets by smashing stuff and attacking stuff, shooting things? Like, I feel like that, I mean, Castlevania did that. I think that's language of Metroid and Metroidvanias as much as it is just Metroid. And so while your criticism is valid, I'm not going to invalidate you on your own podcast. I will push back a little bit that if you are as big a Metroidvania fan as you say you are, which I believe that you are, that language is in other games as well. Maybe not the specifics of using the bombs in the corner, but like shooting a wall, shooting missiles at walls or doors or floors, like all of that stuff, I feel like is kind of inherent in, like, how do you find secrets in a video game? You attack it. You attack walls, right? Like, that's as old as time, basically. But I hear that. I think another like shining example of why this game is really great is for a Game Boy Advance, not even for a Game Boy Advance game. Fuck that language. Pardon my language. I I think that this is a gorgeous game and it's a gorgeous video game, full stop. Yes, it's gorgeous for a Game Boy Advance game. Yes, the Game Boy Advance is older tech, but I will argue to the day I die, pixels will age better than polygons, and it still looks incredible. And the way I will prove it is those boss designs, like the TV screen looking weird thing you fight, the virus, like that thing is horrifying and awesome looking. Like most of the bosses look cool and freaky as hell. And like to that end, this game is scary. It's not as scary as, say, a Resident Evil, but like the first time you see the SAX and it like looks at the screen and they show like the hollow eyes of this clone Samus in the gear, like that's terrifying. It spooked the crap out of me as a kid, and it still gives me chills now. And I think to be able to do that on the Game Boy Advance is not only impressive, but I think a benchmark for the kinds of things that games like later on Signalis would do with PlayStation graphics, right? Like making these affecting, terrifying games with very little as far as graphical fidelity, right? Like The Last of Us is scary because something's chomping on your neck and ripping it out, like it's visceral. And there's plenty, not to put down The Last of Us, but like when you have graphical fidelity like that, it's much easier to achieve that because you can show a clear picture. With games like, you know, Signalis, which I mentioned earlier, and this game, you are using your limits to convey that. And I think that is impressive. And this is one of the better games to do it in the genre and just generally.
Yeah, when it's stalking you, especially early on, they're like, "Don't fight it, don't bother." Apparently, again, I'm sure this is a lore thing. They're like, "You're super weak to cold." I don't know why I'm
Yep.
super weak to cold. Apparently, that's just a thing.
Because you have Metroid blood in your veins, and way you beat the Metroids, and you see it later in the game, is you freeze them and then shoot them.
Yeah, like another. How would Adam know that? You know what I'm saying? But no, they
Yeah,
explain
yeah.
it well enough. But I do love that they're like, this thing has the freeze ray. You literally can't stop it. Just run away, and just like another version of you is stalking you in the hallways, and you're just like, you got to get out of there. That is cool. That is fun. I do enjoy that.
Yeah. And also the fact that like later on in the segments where it chases you and you actually have to run from it in real time and it's smashing walls. And if you get and the music that's playing and if you get stuck, you're done. Like it hits you twice and you're done basically. Like all of that I think is done so well. And those areas are really frustrating. Like they're not easy to do. You need to use every kit in your abilities to traverse in a way that you don't get clobbered. And they really put the pressure on in those moments. I do like that they're often near checkpoints, so you don't really get stuck. Like we respawn pretty quickly. That and also in modern day, we can use things like save state to make that even a little easier. But I do love the pressure of that too. Like not only being chased by a better version of yourself, but like you cannot dawdle. You just have to go or you will die.
Yep. Just kind of reiterate a point you've already said. I do love some of these boss designs. The spider thing that comes
Oh
down, and
yeah.
there's the big
Yeah, yeah,
jellyfish
yeah.
that jumps on top of you. All that stuff is super cool. When I started, when you're 75% of the way through the game and you're running through the hallways and you're like, oh my god, there's so many little fuckers running around. I don't like those little dudes as much, little guys, TM, as much as the main bosses. But those boss designs are all really. I don't think there's a one I didn't enjoy. Like they're all really unique and weird. And then again, the lore stuff. I'm like, hey, there's Ridley. I think that's a Ridley. I don't know what an Omega Metroid is. I don't know. And, here's another thing. A little diatribe, right? These games are like, oh yeah, you're on this Space Federation and you're out here saving the galaxy. But all Samus does is commit genocide. Every mission is like, let's eradicate this entire species of alien. Is that true? Am I getting that
We
correct?
don't talk about that part that
Is that what's
she
going on?
destroyed all the Metroids and now she destroyed all the X. Well, yeah, but the thing is like the X parasites are an invasive species. It'll kill everything if it gets out. So you're doing a favor there. The Metroids were also considered to be an invasive series, but then it turned out they were the natural predator of the X. And anyway, it's a whole thing. The
That was
funny thing
fun
is you
when they started attacking the clone because
uh-huh.
it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's a natural predator. I'm like, ooh, nature finds a way. I like this. It's fun.
Although with your nitpicking, I do love the fact that you're nitpicking a Metroid story that mostly happens in minor moments and gets the hell out of your way. I mean, I think the best thing about Metroid and why, as of when we're recording, I have yet to play Metroid Prime 4. I've only played Prime 1. I will not be playing Prime 1 and 2 before 4. Am I worried about understanding the story? Not even a little bit. Because at the end of the day, even if I don't, like Metroid gets out of your way. It gives you some story. And then, like, this one has more narrative, but even still, it's in the elevators. It's when you're talking to Adam, who turns out your old CO is the kind of the brain power behind this computer in your ship. Like, all of that doesn't matter to enjoy this game. Like a Hollow Knight Silk Song I'll invoke because people love that one. I think it's fine. I need to play more of it. But mostly to get them mad. But no, in all seriousness, like Hollow Knight's the same way, right? Like those games have great story, but at the end of the day, if you don't understand the story, it really doesn't affect how much you love the gameplay because the gameplay is tight and well made, right? And I think this is another example of that, right? Like this game is made really well. So even though you don't understand the story, you were still able to finish it and have a good time playing the actual game.
Oh yeah, no, story doesn't matter at all. I just think it's funny how I'm like this hero who keeps killing all of
Everything.
these species. They're all gone. It's like send this station into that planet. What? Okay, all right, Samus. I see you're doing. But no, like it doesn't matter. Again, if you're giving me a fun game that is like fun to run around and jump and platform and shoot stuff, I don't care. If you can do both, that's cool. But I really don't need it.
Yeah.
If you can make the game fun, so that's not a huge deal for me. Let's see. Is there anything else? I feel like we've talked about the things that I want to talk about. I mean, because it's, again, I love a short gameplay, the story stuff, the suits and the upgrade. I mean, that's basic Metroidvania stuff. I do like, and you might have explained this to me, the blue suit.
So what happens?
Yeah, explain it.
Oh,
I
go
think
ahead.
I get it, but explain exactly. And then I love, as the game goes, how you kind of rebuild the suit a little bit.
So the deal is at the very beginning of the game when Samus is attacked by the X parasite, it gets into her suit. And because this is a special suit that was gifted to her from the Chozo, which you wouldn't know either, a race of bird people that raised her after she was orphaned by Ridley, it's basically bonded to her body. You can't just take it off. She can just take it off, like the helmet and stuff, but you can't just remove it from her without her permission. So if she's unconscious, you have to surgically remove it because she can only remove it. And so they do that, and because they do that and then inject her with the Metroid DNA to protect her against the X, because it's a natural predator, the Metroid DNA makes this new suit around her body to protect her. It's her genes and the Chozo DNA working together to create a new version of armor. I'm probably butchering the explanation a little bit because it is a little convoluted and they like only build on it more in Dread, which is I'd be interested for you to try Dread at some point now having played this because it's a direct sequel. When it said Metroid 5 on that screen, when they announced Dread, I damn near lost my mind. I never thought I was getting a direct sequel.
Yeah, because the Dread suit it doesn't have the gold on it. It's white and blue and only the face mask is red. Interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
And so that's why it looks the way it does. And I think it looks awesome. I think it's one of the cooler suits. I do like the modernization of it in Dread, that it looks more like a regular Chozo suit. It's almost altered a bit. Like maybe Samus improved it between games or whatever. But yeah, I love that you cannot look like you used to. Like the suit eventually changes to the colors that like the gravity suit does in previous games and stuff, and gets to like that similar purplish red color scheme that you have by the end of other Metroid games. But I do love that it's like this different take on it, and that basically Samus hasn't had the same suit in a Metroid game since the OG games because they keep doing little twists on it. Like even the ads we've seen for Prime 4, that suit has like a purplish overtone and different adjustments, and so it looks different. We also don't know where in the timeline that one takes place, the previous trilogy, but I do like how they always kind of reinvent the wheel when redesigning her suits, and this one I thought looked pretty badass.
So this might not be official, just because we're here talking about timeline. According to Wikipedia, there's a story chronology. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond takes place between Metroid Prime Federation Force and Metroid 2 Return of Samus.
Okay, so yeah, that's the timeline because technically all of the Prime games take place between 1 and 2. So they don't have to touch any of the changes that have happened with Fusion and Dread and even Super Metroid. So they can still use the Metroids, they can still use Ridley, they can still use a lot of these things that wouldn't make sense if they pushed it a lot further along the timeline. So interesting, it's still between those. Yeah. Specifically Federation Force, because I believe the villain in 4 is one of the characters in Federation Force, though I never played that game.
The villain is one of
Um,
those people playing soccer or whatever.
it's man, Federation Force, what a wild curveball. Man, I was so mad. Anyway, we don't get a Metroid game in ages, and then they put this thing out. Like, anyway, that's a diatribe for another time. The thing we haven't talked about that I also want to talk about is this game has incredible music. It is not a soundtrack you can just jam to all the time, but like the atmosphere, like again, that's what makes this a horror game. The silence or the low tones when you encounter SAX, when the SAX chases you, that high octane like tune that's like panic music basically, or even when you're escaping from the explosion and the panic music that's playing. Like I love all of that. I think the Metroid games have some of the best music where music is a character within the game. You know, it's not a soundtrack that you'll bump in the after hours unless it's a techno remix or you're listening to Samus the rapper. Yes, there's a nerdcore rapper named Samus, and she's awesome, and she's rapped over Metroid beats before. Um, but but I do love the music and feel like it's a whole other character. In the same way that, like in other survival horror games, the soundtrack is key to the intensity and purveying the tenseness between moments.
I just want to give a shout out to you and to Nintendo for, as we've talked about this game and, gone back and forth on it. It really is pretty cool that they did all this on a GBA. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah,
That's pretty dope. Just
yeah.
the fact they got this music that they've got. I don't know. GBA. Apparently, you brought a good one, Matt. That's all I'm gonna say. You brought something interesting.
Yeah. Look, we don't have time for it, but the GBA is one of my favorite video game consoles of all time. And if you look at graphically, the games that came out on that console, I'd say the most consistently gorgeous pixel art games you will ever see. But this is definitely one of them. One that you couldn't really see without the backlit screen. Like they color corrected so the colors would show through without the backlight, to the point that when they released the SP and it had the backlight, everything looked kind of washed out because they had to adjust what it looked like. I think they recolor corrected it for the NSO version, and it basically looks how they wanted it to look. And I think most emulators also color correct it that way too.
Say the version I played that was up in my basement, or not up in my basement, up in my attic, that it looked very good. It wasn't washed out. I keep them up there, so you just make sure they're all safe.
Right, of course, yes.
All right. So is there anything before we move on to the closing part? Because I think we've talked a good amount, but if any last words?
Yeah, I think my last thing is to look into the eyes of the people who complain that there's too much story. Like, just to put a finer point on it, get out of your own way. Nobody cares. Like, Adam enjoyed this game and had no idea what the story was. Like, I think that's my point more than anything else. Like, I get that people like to move in these games, but everything in the narrative here is additive. Samus lamenting to herself, giving her a voice when she'd been the silent protagonist through most of the other games, except when she's like recapping games' past events. The fact that she has a voice here, she talks about her past a bit more, mentions her old CO Adam, mentions that this computer is demanding in that same way, it being the twist that this computer is actually an iteration of Adam after he passed or has his memories or whatever, and eventually starts to help her and pushes against the Federation's like control of it. Like all of that stuff is so cool. And then just the sci-fi style of you're fighting a clone of yourself, and like the boss version of the SAX at the end, this like morphed weird creature that still has this form of Samus, but like with a mouth coming out of the helmet or what, like all of that's so damn cool. And then the final Metroid that you fight, the ultimate Metroid you fight at the very end before you escape, like all of those set pieces are so cool. And I think that this adds such cool narrative that the reason I was so stoked when Dread came out is because they just continued the story. They straight up picked where they left off. And I think there's strength to that. I mean, the Prime series, which folks love, has a ton more story. So I think that was always going to be the evolution of this franchise. And the people who say this game's bad because there's too much story and they segment the areas, I think are weak. Because every area you go into, you still get to explore a ton, but you know that there's an endpoint and you know where to go. And it doesn't tell you where to go. It just tells you the next point you're going to. There's still discovery on the way, and then there are still other discoveries elsewhere. Yeah, I think those arguments are bunk, and I'm putting my foot down here.
Let them know. Tell them what's up. All right. We're going to move to our closing here. The last part of the podcast, we start to wrap it up a little bit. Here, I would read any listener thoughts. maybe there's a weird time warp. That's actually impossible because some of these are pre-recorded and I haven't even announced the podcast formally. So if you want to go to patreon.com slash the tier list, and let me double check that is my correct link. Yeah, the tier list. Or if you want to go on Blue Sky at Tier List Gaming, in the future I will announce things ahead of time and you can give your thoughts about games as you want to do. All right, we're going to go ahead and move into our second screen. And this is the official tier list screen. I think that's what I'm going to call it here, where we're going to leave our final votes. I've got your little Fun and Games logo down here. I've got a tier list logo over here. And again, we've got, S through D. We've already explained what S is, but we've had a talk. We're going through it. Where do you decide you're going to put the game at?
I've reaffirmed myself. I think I just I'm filled with vim and vigor, newfound confidence. I think this is an S tier game, and that's where I would put it. I think while the complaints about it are valid for a personal experience, I don't think it's the quality of the game that's the problem. It's that different people feel differently about Metroidvania specifically. It's why I joked about Silksong. I don't like Hollow Knight, and I think Silksong's okay so far. I haven't played a ton of it because it's too hard. I don't like the Souls elements, but that's not the game. It's not a bad game. Saying Silksong's a bad game because I'm bad at it is ludicrous, right? And so to that end, I think that this, beyond the complaints, is one of the best Metroid games ever made, and for sure, one of the best Metroidvanias ever. So I would put it in the S tier.
All right, very good. All the arguments you just made, if you go to the internet, they all say you're absolutely wrong on that. You're wrong, I'm right, how that goes. Going into this, actually, I agree with you. I'm joking around. Here's the thing. For me, I'm going to be very stringent. Is that the right word? I guess.
Yeah, maybe.
Stingy? I don't know. I'm going to be very selective when I put games in S tier.
Sure.
You as a guest, put it wherever you want. That's fine. I'm not going to argue. You brought it for a reason. That's awesome. For me, when I'm like, it needs to be masterclass or top 20, I just recently added the top 25 of all time. Like the last week's game that Jerica did, we did Inscription, and I'm an Inscription sicko. I absolutely adore that game. I did not put it in S tier, point blank period, because I don't think it's a top 25 game for me. So for me, this game automatically goes under that because I haven't played a lot of Metroid. I don't love Metroid like that, but this game is super, super, super good. Anyone who thinks this game is bad, I think, is actually just like not right in the head. So I'm like going back and forth between A and B. So A, just for listeners out there, A is excellence in gaming, widely regarded as fantastic games most people would enjoy playing. This tier could represent personal favorites or games that stand out amongst the best in his genre or game of the year material. And B is great games. This tier could be recommended to fans of the genre or hardcore players. This could represent generally well-received games, popular in their time, or represented by a sizable fan base. So I'm somewhere between those two.
Can I try and sway you?
You can try.
Because
I think absolutely.
Because I think you said yourself this was an approachable Metroidvania, and though while you didn't always understand the story or some of the intricacies, you were able to pick up and play like a pro without issue. That sounds like excellence in gaming, right? Widely regarded as fantastic, personal favorites, best amongst the genre. Like this one for hardcore players, like I think this is a perfectly good entry-level Metroidvania. It's definitely a perfectly fine entry-level Metroid game, as it was basically for you. So like that would be my argument that it goes more towards A than B personally, because as you're talking about it, and I think it is in my top 25 of all time. Based on your descriptions, it sounds like even for me it's more A, and that's why I would push you towards A as well.
Like that politicking over there. That sounds like an A to me. Your words. Here's the thing. I let Dave Jackson convince me to put the original Resident Evil 4 in A tier, and honestly, I think I should have put
He's correct.
No, I should have put it in B.
I disagree.
Ooh, try playing a 2005 game in 2025 for the first time. Let me tell you, it doesn't feel good.
I did do that in 2020. I played someone who's bad at the other Resident Evil games, doesn't really love that franchise, played the Steam version of Resident Evil 4 on PC in 2020 and absolutely loved every second of it. So Dave is correct.
Not being able to turn, like, just like barely look over your shoulder all the time.
You know what? All right. You know what? Anyway,
I'm gonna give you because again, I want to change he convinced me to do an A, and I want to change it to a B now. Maybe I will by the end of the season. I can do whatever I want. It's my show. I'm gonna
it's
stick
true.
this in B.
All
But
right.
I'm you have me teetering on the edge. I really was considering A because thoroughly
Okay.
enjoyed this video game. But then
Excellent.
the thing sitting in my mind, and you have your opinion and you're not wrong about it, was this and Prime came out at the same time. And I'm like, I wouldn't put Prime in S tier. Do I
Yeah.
put them at the same tier, or do I think Prime's just a little bit more impressive? See, that's where my mind is at. We're like,
Mm.
if I put Prime here, I can't put where do I put Fusion compared to Prime? That's where
I mean,
my
they could both be S tier if you ask me. I'm
no,
just
I'm
saying.
not putting
I'm
Prime
just
in S tier. I'm not gonna do that. The Wii clicking around. I'm going to
Well,
I'm
that
gonna,
was your problem. You played it on the Wii. If you played it on the GameCube or on the Switch, you'd be fine.
I could play wherever it was at. I'm gonna stick it in B for now. Maybe by the
Okay.
end of maybe I'll switch it by the end of the season. But this is the exact opposite of me and Dave's episode. Dave convinced me of A, and I wanted to put it in B. And here, actually, I'm going back to A. I'm trying to make up for sins of the past
Yeah. Let's go.
because
Let's go. Take that, Dave Jackson.
Dave Jackson bullied me into putting that 2005 video game that he even admitted the entire island section of Resident Evil 4 sucks, and I still
It
put
does
it in
suck.
A
It's
tier.
bad.
But no, I thought again, I didn't need to know anything about Metroid Fusion. Played it for the first time. Give me a quick and easy. Again, especially after reviewing a almost 20-hour Metroidvania, give me a 6-hour one, and I'm here for it all day. So yeah, first time playing it, really liked it. GBA, you did good stuff. So officially, where we have it, Matt has it in S tier. Adam has it in A tier for Metroid Fusion for the Game Boy Advanced. But our words aren't the last words. We don't have the final say necessarily. This is a call out to the audience. You all can vote on the placement of the game based on your feelings of the arguments given or just however you feel it. You think it's dog water, go ahead and throw it in D. If you think it's the best game of all time, put it in S. I don't care. Listen or don't. Just go vote. There will be a straw poll in the description of this video or podcast that you can go click on that, throw in your vote. Go to patreon.com/the tier list. There's also going to be a free vote there as well. Just go vote for it. At the end of the season, these will all get tallied up. And at the end of the season, all the games will be placed in the
This
tier
is the
list
list.
based on what you said, what I said, and what the audience says. So make sure to vote. Check all that stuff out. All right. That's everything for Metroid Fusion. Thank you once again for coming on after you enjoyed a fun date with somebody else that I wish I was there for, but that's not a big deal. Any final
We're
plugs?
not going to name names.
Yeah, we're not going to say anything. Anything you wanna say getting out of here? Any last plugs or anything you want to talk about?
Sure. Well, first, I am going to plug that you should play Metroid Zero Mission now because that came out after this, and it's a remake of the original Metroid. So it's the beginning of the story, and I think one of the best Metroid games as well. Game Boy Advance really knocking it out of the park. So I will pitch that, and you could play it the same way you played this up in the attic or whatever you're talking about. So, I am going to pitch for that, but also I'm going to pitch for my podcast, Fun and Games. We've done a ton of Metroid content. If you like the side quest series that I talked about earlier, something I didn't mention is every 50 episodes at a milestone, we do that same short form format, praising a game, but in a longer format with my co-host Jeff and a guest as well. And I don't remember what number it was, but Alex Lavelle joined us to do Metroid Dread on side quests, and it was great. It was a really fun, long discussion. We also, very early in the run of the show, did a retrospective right before, I think right after Dread came out, of the entire Metroid franchise. This was before I had played Prime. We also did that with Alex Lavelle. You can sense a pattern here about Metroid loving. Those are definitely worth checking out. Otherwise, the best way to find me is on Blue Sky. I'm djstormageddon.com. You can also go to that same URL to find everything that I do. You'll find my podcasts, my merch store, my Patreon for fun and games. There's a free tier there as well. I write articles every month, usually about an indie game. If you want reading articles about indie games, you can go there for free and get access to that, as well as voting in our console retrospective polls. We could do whatever console retrospective we want. Instead, we put it to the listeners, usually a choice of 4. As of when we're recording, we just did one on the Sega Saturn, something I have no experience with. Thankfully, we had a wonderful guest, Chris Copleen, who does a Sega Saturn series for his podcast, come and talk about it. But if you like any of that stuff, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, go check that out. Again, djstormageddon.com is the best place to find all of that.
Yeah, thank you again. Again, check me out, patreon.com/tier list. If you're listening to the podcast, watching the video, go ahead and like, subscribe, review, tell a friend, all that good stuff, so everyone can hear about this amazing tier list podcast, which is completely original and no one has ever done before. Yeah, thank you once again, and have a good one, y'all.